On the 10th anniversary of our relationship, my boyfriend secretly organized a grand wedding for my best friend, who was battling cancer. Her last wish was to marry him, and he agreed, without telling me. Ray Hall blocked all news about it, forbidding anyone from informing me. But my best friend live-streamed the entire ceremony so I could watch. That night, I cried until I passed out. After the wedding, Ray stayed with her on the island. One day, when my heart condition worsened, he rushed her to the hospital, leaving me alone and almost costing me my life. Hurt, I accepted a proposal from Nathan Foster, a prominent figure in Seattle's elite circle. He kept asking me again and again, "Trina Burton, are you really willing to marry me?" Every minute, he would send a message to confirm. After I said yes, he sent me more than a dozen pictures of diamond rings to choose from, each more stunning than the last. "These are rings I bought at an auction. Do you like any of them?" When I didn't reply right away, he sent another message seconds later. "If none of them appeal to you, there will be a jewelry auction in the UK soon. I'll take you so you can pick one yourself." After carefully examining the rings, I sent a voice message to Nathan. "The pink diamond from Graf is beautiful. Let's choose that one for our wedding ring." Just then, Ray appeared behind me. He heard the words wedding ring, and, for once, his normally calm face showed a flash of panic. "Wedding ring? What wedding ring?" he asked, looking at me with such intensity it almost unsettled me. I looked at him indifferently, ready to make up an excuse. But just then, my phone rang. It was my best friend, Elena Turner. I answered and heard her tearful voice on the other end. "Trina, is Ray with you? I just had another nosebleed. I'm really scared." Before I could reply, Ray grabbed the phone from me. "Elena, don't worry. I'm coming now," he assured her urgently. Then, without saying another word to me, he ran out the door. I was left there, forgotten, as he rushed to her side. Only then did I remember he had asked me to go with him on a nighttime cruise down the Pearl River, a plan he made to make up for missing our 10th anniversary. So this is what it feels like to finally let someone go, to see him run after another woman. My heart remains calm, unmoved, as if nothing could shake it anymore. My phone rang again. This time it was Nathan. "Trina, are you ready? I'll pick you up in Boston tomorrow." Looking into the distance, I answered softly, "Give me a week to sort everything out. Then I'll return to Seattle and we'll get married." His voice was warm on the other end. "All right, I'll wait for you. If anything comes up that you can't handle, remember I'm here." After hanging up, I called Grandpa Hall to say goodbye. He and my grandfather had been war comrades and shared a deep bond. When I was 8, doctors diagnosed me with a serious heart condition. Fortunately, the Colorado family owned a renowned private hospital specializing in cardiology, so my grandfather decided to send me to Boston for treatment. Since then, Ray's parents had taken care of me as if I were their own, and Grandpa Hall always treated me with endless kindness. As I prepared to return to Seattle, saying goodbye felt natural. Ray didn't come home that night. Instead, a message from Elena appeared on my phone. "Look at you, with cake all over your face. So cute." Attached was a photo of Ray leaning in to take a bite of cake, while Elena playfully smeared cream on his cheek. Moments later, she deleted the message. "Sorry, Trina, I sent it to the wrong person," she wrote again. "Ray thought it was cute and asked me to send it. You're not upset, are you?" "No," I replied. Instead, I went back to my room and began silently packing my things. The next day at noon, Ray finally came home, carrying a gift as an apology. "Trina, Elena's condition got worse last night. I took her to the hospital," he said, watching me closely. He stayed silent as I opened the velvet box he offered. Inside was an elegant Van Cleef & Arpels watch, its strap lined with diamonds. Beautiful. Extravagant. But I remembered that he had once given Elena a similar gift. Mine was simply the more expensive version. Noticing my lack of response, Ray asked with a hint of concern, "Trina, are you upset?" I replied calmly, "No, Elena isn't well. You should be with her." He looked at me curiously, as if sensing something more behind my answer, but in the end, he just sighed. "I'm glad you're not angry. After all, we have a long future ahead of us. But Elena..." His eyes sparkled with emotion. I didn't have the patience to listen any longer. "Then, by all means, spend more time with her." With that, I turned to leave, but he grabbed my wrist, stopping me abruptly. When I looked up, my face was blank, my eyes emotionless. "What is it?" I asked. Ray looked slightly irritated, though he didn't seem to know why. Before he could say anything, his phone rang again. He looked at me once more. Trina, I'll be away on a business trip for a few days. I won't be back for a while. Take care, I replied indifferently, thinking his absence would make it easier for me to visit the Hall family and say goodbye. The next morning, I gathered the gifts I had prepared and headed to the Hall family home. When Mrs. Hall heard I was returning to Seattle, her eyes filled with concern. Trina, what happened? You've adjusted so well here in Boston. Why leave so suddenly? Mr. Hall, on the other hand, slammed his hand on the table in frustration. And where's Ray? Why didn't he come with you? Did he treat you badly? I hesitated, but couldn't bring myself to tell them everything. No, nothing like that. It's just, I've been away from home for too long. I'd like to go back and reconnect. Mrs. Hall looked at me with worry. Does Ray know you're planning to go back to settle things? I nodded. Yes, he knows. With that, everyone seemed to understand that there was no changing my mind. After exchanging a few more words, I got up to leave. Just then, the front door opened, and there stood Ray, with Elena at his side, looking calm and confident. Trina, what a surprise to see you here, he said with a smile, as if Elena was already a part of the Hall family. I looked straight at her and said firmly, I don't need to explain to you why I'm here. With that, I walked past Ray, heading for the door. Realizing I was leaving, Ray quickly followed, his voice urgent. Trina, you've got it all wrong. I only brought Elena here so my parents could help her find a good doctor. He paused, as if trying to reason with me. After all, she's your best friend, isn't she? You're not mad, right? I stopped for a brief moment. His words faded as I was overwhelmed by memories. His promise under the cherry tree when I was 18. He had told me that marrying me was his lifelong dream. He once promised he'd bring me home to meet his parents as his future wife. And yet there he was, introducing another woman to the Hall family while telling me he was away on business. Seeing the hope in Ray's eyes, I answered coldly. And why would I care? I've never been one to hold grudges. People who aren't worth it don't deserve my energy. Ray looked confused for a second. Trina, do you really not care at all? It was impossible to satisfy him when he and Elena were around. Before, he'd called me too sensitive for being upset. Now that I was choosing to ignore it, he still wasn't happy. I saw no point in explaining myself. Without another word, he leaned in and kissed my forehead. Be good and wait for me at home, he whispered. As the elevator doors closed, I wiped my forehead. The gesture made me nauseous. On our 10th anniversary, Ray had also avoided me with some excuse about a business trip. That night, I received a video call request from Elena. When the call connected, I heard the joyful sounds of a wedding celebration, and slowly realized it was Ray and Elena's wedding. 3 months earlier, Elena had announced her terminal diagnosis on social media with a post that read, "Before I die, I want a wedding with the person I love most." At the time, I hadn't sensed anything strange between us. I even left a comment asking who that special person was. She simply replied, "You'll find out when the time comes." Learning the truth felt like a blow to the chest, knocking the air out of me with pain. Desperately, I dialed Ray's number over and over, wanting to understand why he had done this to me. But that night, he didn't answer a single call. I cried until I passed out while he spent his wedding night with Elena. Fortunately, all of this would be over soon. Later, after I had returned home, Elena called. "Trina, I'm really sorry. I truly didn't expect to see you today." I let out a bitter laugh and said nothing in response. Elena took a deep breath, her tone laced with envy. "I know, Cora Hall is just so wonderful. She was so kind and sweet to me," she said. "They even said they'd do everything they could to help me, find the right doctor." She paused, then lowered her voice. "Trina, why couldn't it be me marrying into the Hall family? Of course, it could be, if she had what it takes." "Well, I wish you both a happy marriage in advance," I replied coldly before hanging up, tempted to block her number entirely. Maybe that would stop her from reaching out just to flaunt the place she stole in my life. But just as I was about to do that, I accidentally opened her social media and found something outrageous. She had stolen my Dice Today draft. She submitted it to a contest, the very same draft I had created as a birthday gift for Ray. My hands trembled with rage. She must have taken it in secret. Trying to calm my racing heart, I took a deep breath, grabbed my copyright certificate, and filed a plagiarism report on the contest website against Elena's entry. After handling everything, I got a call from my friend Selena. co-owner of the studio with me. Trina, what's going on? Why did you suddenly pull your investment? Selena asked. She had always been a mutual friend between Elena and me, though she and Elena never really got along. I decided to tell her everything, including that I was planning to get married. When Selena heard it, she was furious. That Elena is unbelievable. Using her illness as an excuse to steal someone else's boyfriend? She's probably faking it. Ugh, I'm so mad. I'm calling her later to tell her exactly what I think. I couldn't help but feel touched by her outrage, but I sighed. Forget it. She's not worth it. The wedding's soon, and I just want to move on. At that moment, I heard footsteps approaching behind me. Suddenly, Ray's voice echoed. Wedding? What wedding? I didn't even have to turn around to know he was standing right there, in the doorway of my studio. My spine stiffened, my hand still holding the painting I was wrapping in tissue paper. I closed my eyes for a second, breathed, then continued as if nothing had happened. But he stepped in. His footsteps were too firm for someone supposedly away on a business trip. What wedding, Trina? What are you doing? I carefully placed the painting into the box and turned around slowly to face him. He looked lost. Angry, yes, but there was something else there too. Like the ground had shifted under his feet and he didn't know where to run. This is none of your business, I said, my voice clear and cold, so polite it even surprised me. He looked around, noticing the carefully organized mess. Stacked boxes, wrapped canvases, books taken off the shelves. He stopped, staring at it all with a hardened expression. You're packing everything. It wasn't a question. You're leaving. Yes, I answered simply. For good. With Nathan? I stayed silent. I picked up the black envelope from the clipboard. I didn't want to waste more time with pointless conversation. So it's true, he said, his voice gaining that tone that hurt me more than yelling. You're running away to marry him? Just like that? I'm not running away, I murmured. I'm leaving. There's a difference. He took a step forward, his face beginning to flush. His fury always came neatly wrapped in restraint. You don't understand anything. Elena is way too healthy for someone who claims to be on her deathbed, I cut him off, staring straight into his eyes. Healthy enough to steal my project and submit it like it was hers. Does that sound fragile to you? He stopped. What are you talking about? I handed him the envelope. I watched as he opened it, and his eyes began to scan the pages. First fast, then slower. His hands trembled slightly. Still, he tried to look like he was in control. She said it was a tribute, he muttered finally, that you had approved it. Like she approved her own cancer too? Ray blinked like I had slapped him. And then, for the first time in a long while, he went silent. He had no answer. I took advantage of the silence to keep packing. I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to get out of everything. But he was still standing in the same spot, looking at me like he was seeing something he had never noticed before. You broke me, Ray, I whispered. You broke everything I still wanted to believe in. I really thought you would choose me one day. He started pacing nervously, running his hands through his hair the way he used to when we were teenagers. I remembered the promises under the cherry tree, when he said I was his dream. A lie. This can't be happening, he kept repeating. I didn't know. Trina, I swear to God, I didn't know. Well, now you do. I sealed the box with tape. I bent down to grab another one, but his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Firm, just like he always did when he wanted me to listen. You can't just leave like this, he said, and for the first time, his voice cracked. We need to talk. Ray. I gently pulled my hand free. I'm no longer the woman who waited. I'm the woman who's leaving. And I left. But of course he followed. Of course he wouldn't let me go just like that, not without trying one last time to bend me with that look of controlled desperation. Trina, he called from the hallway, his footsteps echoing quickly on the hardwood floor behind me. Please, wait. I turned slowly. My eyes met his, and for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just an echo, as if all the emotions had been drained, and what was left was an empty space where he used to live. You want more truth, Ray? I asked without raising my voice. Then listen. I stepped back into the studio, with him following. I grabbed my laptop, quickly opened a folder, and turned the screen toward him. It was there, the final artwork, the full layout of the project I had developed. Days that never were, Signed by Elena Turner. The same Elena featured on the contest website. The same Elena posing as if she had lived that story. "This is mine," I said, eyes locked on his. "You remember, don't you? I showed you this project the night I finished it. It was supposed to be your birthday gift. Now she's competing with it." He stepped closer, his eyes going from the screen to me. His expression was pure disbelief. "Trina, I swear I never saw this. Elena told me you had abandoned the project, that you didn't want to publish it, that you allowed her to what?" I cut him off, my throat burning. To take something I created from the first sketch to the final period? He opened his mouth but said nothing. He looked at me like he was finally seeing the damage, like he was just now realizing the cracks weren't just between me and Elena, but between him and everything we used to be. "I trusted you, Ray. I gave myself completely. And you? You hid behind her illness, behind guilt, behind, she needs me. She lied to me too." He exploded finally. "I didn't know about this. If I had, do you think I would have gone through with that ridiculous wedding? That I would have—" His voice faltered. "You kissed her on the live stream. I saw it," I replied, emotionless. "You blocked me, asked everyone not to tell me anything. And she let me watch the whole thing. Every damn minute." He looked like he was about to burst. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from wounded pride. "It's not fair," he murmured. "You're treating me like I was complicit. Because you were. Even if you didn't hold her hand while she lied. You looked the other way while she stole what was mine. And that, Ray, is also a choice." He lowered his head, his hands trembled. "I'm not the man you think I am. I know. That's why I'm leaving." He looked up at me again. And in that second, I saw something that almost broke me. He really did look lost. But the problem is, I had already spent too long losing myself just so he could find himself. He took a step forward, hesitant, almost fragile. "Trina, all of this, the wedding." He took a deep breath, as if saying it physically hurt. "It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. But Elena told me she was at the end, that she didn't want to die without experiencing that. And you what?" My voice came out lower than I meant. "You thought she would die if you didn't kiss her at the altar." He clenched his fists. He was angry because he was cornered, not because he was sorry. "I thought I could give her a moment of happiness. Something symbolic. I thought you'd understand later. That you'd forgive me." I took a step back. "You hid everything from me. On purpose. You blocked my calls. You left me alone. While I was almost dying too. I didn't know," he repeated. "I didn't know you were unwell. Elena begged me to stay on the island. She said she just needed one more week." "1 week? Ray, that's how long I spent waiting for you to look at me. Just 1 week." He fell silent. His eyes seemed to search mine for a spark of the Trina who used to forgive. But she was gone. I married her out of pity. It wasn't real. There was no love. I let out a weak, humorless laugh. "So that's it? You want me to believe you were forced? That someone had a gun to your head when you said, 'I do'? That when you smeared cake on her cheek and laughed like an idiot, you were pretending?" He looked at me, but there was something different in his expression now. A tiredness that hadn't been there before. "Maybe I wanted to believe I was doing the right thing," he whispered. "But all I did was hurt you." "Yes, and you succeeded." The silence that followed was heavy. He didn't try to come closer. And maybe that was the first right decision he'd made in a long time. "I'm going with Nathan." My voice was steady. "I don't know if it'll last, but it's real." He chose me with his eyes wide open. He saw me at rock bottom and still wanted to stay. Ray lowered his gaze. "Do you still love me?" I closed my eyes for a second, breathed in, felt my heart beat hard. Then another beat. Wrong. Like it skipped a step. "It doesn't matter," I whispered. And then it happened. First came the dizziness, then a high-pitched ringing in my ears, and suddenly, everything around me started to blur. I stepped wrong. The box in my hands crashed to the floor. I tried to lean on the table, but my legs gave out. "Trina?" I heard Ray call out, his voice now panicked. "Trina, what's happening?" My vision went blurry. I felt my body tilt to the side, and then, darkness. Someone was shouting my name, once, twice, then faster, closer. "Trina! Trina, look at me! Please!" Ray's voice came from somewhere far away. Warm, desperate. I felt his arms under me, his hands cupping my face gently, as if trying to put my broken pieces back together. My body was heavy, cold, my mouth dry. I wanted to say something, anything, but my tongue felt like stone. Only a faint sound escaped. Trina, no, he murmured, his voice now cracking. Stay with me. Please, don't go. I felt his touch on my forehead, then my hand. He was trembling. Call an ambulance, he shouted to someone I couldn't see. Right now. Someone ran. I heard doors slam open, fast footsteps, and still the only sound that filled my world was Ray's breathing, short, shaky, and the light grip of his fingers on mine. I can't lose you, he said in Spanish, more to himself than to me. No puedo, no otra vez. Part of me wanted to say that he had already lost me, that what we had died with the sound of that wedding march on the island, but my body didn't respond. Only my heart did, offbeat and fragile. You're going to be okay, he kept repeating. I promise. I'll fix everything. Fix. The most absurd word that could have come out of his mouth. He still thought this was like a cracked vase that could be mended with tape, but my chest hurt too much to even hate him for it. The studio seemed to spin around me, lights, voices, a stretcher. I was lifted. I felt cold air on my arms and faces I didn't recognize around me. But just before they took me away, I heard Ray whisper at my side, I'm going with her. And this time, there was no arrogance in his voice, only fear. The siren of the ambulance was a constant scream through the streets. I couldn't see anything, but I heard everything. Urgent voices, sharp commands, the sound of metal, of the stretcher's wheels, of air being pushed through a respirator. And through it all, Ray. He wouldn't stop talking, as if my consciousness were a thread he was trying to hold onto with words. Trina, listen to me. We're almost there. You're going to be okay. I'm here. I'm with you. Please, just hold on a little longer. His fingers gripped my hand, but it wasn't strength. It was desperation, pure and simple. He was trembling so much I wondered if he'd be the one to faint first. As soon as the hospital doors opened, bright white lights hit me through my eyelids. The cold air from the surgical hallway struck me like an icy punch. Does she have a cardiac history? A voice asked loudly. Yes, Ray responded, already running beside the stretcher. She has a condition, since she was a child. Serious heart condition. Is she under treatment? On medication? In Boston, with the Hall family. I can call. Please. They moved me into a room. The sound of beeping monitors replaced the noise of the street. Then, hands separated me from Ray. A nurse pushed him back firmly. Sir, you have to wait outside. No, I have to stay. Sir, you're not family. He hesitated. And then, for the first time, his voice broke. She is my fiancé. He lied, the word coming out like a plea for help. Please. But the door closed, and I knew, even without seeing it, that he stayed there, frozen. For the first time in years, Ray Hall had no control over anything. Inside, the voices became muffled. The world dissolved into irregular heartbeats, and then everything went dark again. Silence was the first sound I heard. A thick, humid silence, almost sticky. The kind of silence that only exists inside a hospital, between distant beeps and held breaths. I felt the weight of my own body before I could open my eyes. It was like I was sunk into a mattress of concrete. Every muscle ached as if it had been forced back to life. Then came the smell. Antiseptic. Metal. Something slightly sweet and completely artificial. The AC buzzed at a tone too low to annoy, but just sharp enough to remind me I wasn't home. Slowly, I tried to move my hand. It was warm. Someone was holding it. I turned my head with effort. He was there. Ray, sleeping in a hospital chair like he hadn't rested in days. His suit was wrinkled, his tie undone, hair messily falling into his face, not in a deliberate way. And his face, a face I knew as well as the back of my hand, now looked like a stranger's. There were shadows under his eyes, his mouth slightly open, his brow lightly furrowed, even in sleep. He was gripping my hand like it was the last thing keeping him anchored to this world. For a second, just a second, I had the urge to pull my hand away. Not out of anger, but because it hurt. His touch hurt, but I couldn't. Maybe I was still too weak, Or maybe part of me still wanted to understand why he was there, when he hadn't been in so many other moments when I needed him. A loud beep made me blink. The heart monitor sped up. He woke. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. When he saw me awake, he straightened with a jolt, like he'd been shocked. Trina, thank God," he whispered, his voice hoarse, nearly broken. "Can you hear me?" I nodded faintly. My lips were dry. I tried to speak, but only air came out. He leaned in closer, never letting go of my hand. His voice cracked. "I thought I'd lost you." I wanted to say he already had, but something on his face stopped me. It wasn't performative guilt. It wasn't drama. It was fear, raw and exposed. Fear of having broken something that can't be fixed. "I called the doctor," he continued hurriedly. "You were unconscious for over an hour. They said your heart went into arrhythmia. They've been monitoring water." I managed to whisper, my lips barely moving. He grabbed a cup with a straw from the tray beside me and brought it to my mouth with utmost care. When the cold water touched my tongue, it was like a thread of life weaving back into my body. After a few sips, I could breathe better. "Why, are you here?" I asked, too weak to hide the pain in my voice. He looked at me as if the question hurt more than anything else. "Because you're the only thing I haven't completely destroyed yet," he murmured. "And I'm not leaving until I tell you everything." He leaned forward a bit more, elbows on his knees, his gaze lost for a moment before returning to me. "I know you hate me," he started softly, "and maybe I deserve that. But you need to hear this from me." I didn't answer. I just took a deep breath, trying to keep my heart calm. The machine beside me betrayed every beat. I couldn't lie. I couldn't fake anything. Just listen. When Elena told me about her illness, I panicked. She called me in the middle of the night, crying, saying the tests were really bad, that the doctors gave her no more than 6 months. She said... He stopped, swallowing hard. She said her last wish was to marry me. I closed my eyes. He continued. "I tried to say no, I swear. But she spoke like someone who had already picked out her coffin outfit. She talked about regrets, about dying without ever feeling the complete love of someone. And I got scared. Scared of leaving her alone in her final days. Scared of being cruel, of seeming inhuman." He gave a small, bitter laugh, and in the middle of all that, I left you. I left behind the one person who had always been by my side. I was a coward. I turned a little, slowly, feeling the IV tube pull gently. His eyes were fixed on me. "You blocked my calls, Ray. You made all our friends promise not to tell me anything. You left me alone that night." He nodded, eyes cast down. "I know. I was trying to protect you, or at least, that's what I told myself. But the truth? The truth is, I was trying to protect myself from your reaction. Because deep down, I knew how much it would destroy you, and I did it anyway. The silence between us was razor sharp. I wanted it to hurt him the way it had hurt me, but I also knew it would never be the same pain." "And the project?" I asked. "Did you know she stole it from me?" He shook his head, too quickly. "No, I swear on everything. I thought it was something you two had worked on together, or that you had given it to her. I never saw the submissions or the registration. I only found out when you showed me. And even then, you still did nothing. Because I only realized last night just how bad it all was. Because everything turned into a nightmare so fast that I didn't even know where to start. The pain rose in my chest, slow and cruel. But it wasn't just physical. It was the kind of pain morphine can't touch. "Ray, why do you always think you're the victim in everything?" I asked calmly. "Why do you always think you're in a position where no one can blame you?" He lowered his head. "I don't think that. Not anymore. Now I know exactly where I stand, and I know I deserve every word you say." I sighed, trying to hold back the tears that were forming. He leaned in closer, almost kneeling beside the bed. "Tell me what I can do. Anything. I just want you to trust me again." "Then bring the truth," I whispered. "With proof. You said Elena was sick. Then show me. I want the exams, the medical reports, everything." He hesitated for a moment, and in that moment, I knew. Something was wrong. Something even he didn't want to face. "Trina, if she lied..." "If she lied," I interrupted, "then I need to know. And so do you." We stared at each other for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, like someone finally accepting the plunge into the dark. I'll get the documents, I promise. And Ray? He stopped at the door. Only come back, if it's with the truth. He left. No kiss, no touch, no empty promises. Just silence. And the sound of the door clicking shut behind him with more certainty than any excuse he'd ever given me. I stayed there, alone in the room. The heart monitor still marked the rhythm of my injured body. But for the first time, it wasn't just the physical heart that hurt. It was the other one. The invisible one. The one he tore in silence when he chose a comforting lie instead of a painful truth by my side. The white walls around me felt like they were screaming. I hated hospitals. Since I was a kid, since Boston, since my body learned to betray me before I even knew what the word limit meant. Ray always said he'd protect me, that he'd be with me if something happened. And now, ironically, he was only here because something finally did happen. Not because he chose to stay, but because he had no other choice. I closed my eyes. The lights bothered me, the memories even more. I remembered when he promised me, at 18, that he'd never let anyone take what was mine. I remembered his words that afternoon, when Elena showed the first signs of that so-called illness. The sudden concern, the rush to protect her, the way he started avoiding my eyes. I already knew. Deep down, I always knew. But knowing and accepting are two different things. The doorknob turned. I looked over with my heart racing. But it wasn't Ray. It was a young nurse. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, and her eyes looked tired. "Hello, Miss Burton. I'm here to change your IV and check your chart," she said gently, pulling the medication stand closer. I nodded silently. She flipped through the clipboard, scanning the records, and shook her head slightly. "This hospital is good, but you should have come sooner. You've had a cardiac history since childhood, just like patient Turner." I froze. My eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "Elena Turner. She's registered in the same system. I just found her case odd. She had a few appointments here 2 months ago, but no oncological referrals. Just psychological support sessions and routine checkups. Not even one imaging test. Nothing that would confirm a terminal cancer diagnosis." My whole body went still. The nurse continued distractedly, like she was commenting on the weather. But I knew exactly what it meant, and I felt those words stick to my skin like ice. "Thank you," I whispered. "You can just leave it. I'll manage." She nodded, gathering the new documents to be signed, and left quietly. Alone again, I stared at the ceiling. Elena wasn't sick. And Ray? Maybe he hadn't been fooled. Maybe he just chose not to look. The minutes dragged by slowly, like every second had to swim through heavy seas before reaching me. I didn't know how long had passed, but the heart monitor to my right no longer bothered me. It had become just another background sound, like the voice of someone you've stopped listening to because you no longer believe what they say. I was holding the papers the nurse had left behind. Not by accident, she saw me, she noticed, and she wanted me to know. The dates were there, the appointments, the diagnoses, or rather, the absence of them. No oncology, no tests, nothing to justify the grotesque performance Elena put on at that altar. I think part of me expected to feel rage, the urge to break something, to scream. But what came was a hollow calm, an internal silence that seemed to come from a new Trina, one built from the ashes of the old. When the door opened, I already knew. Ray walked in with an envelope in hand. He walked slowly, like he was returning from his own trial. His suit was wrinkled, his face more worn than before. For a moment, I thought he looked ill. But no, it was just the weight of his choices. "Trina?" I didn't answer. I just reached out my hand with the papers I already had. He stopped mid-motion, looked at the documents like someone seeing their own sentence. "The nurse told me," I said, plainly. "Elena never underwent any treatment. No report. Nothing to support what you believed." He took the papers with trembling hands, his eyes scanning every line. His breath faltered. When he finished, he looked up at me. There were tears in his eyes. I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything." He sat beside me, not daring to touch me. The envelope he'd brought fell onto his lap. There was no need to open it. It was pointless now. "I was tricked," he whispered. "She told me she was dying, and I believed her, because I didn't want to accept the idea that someone could lie about something so vile." I closed my eyes. The Trina from a few months ago might have cried with him. The one now just listened. I left you, Trina, and that wasn't anyone's fault but mine. Yes, I agreed. You left me, even when you were still here. He nodded. The silence now wasn't uncomfortable. It was final. Ray remained still, as if he didn't know what to do with his own body anymore. The envelope sat in his lap, unopened. He knew it didn't matter. There was nothing inside that I hadn't already discovered. He began, but stopped. He was trying to stitch together some sentence, some bridge that could lead him back to me. There was no bridge. I waited. I could end things with her. It's already over, I corrected him calmly. I mean, for real, officially. Annul everything. Ray, you still don't get it. It's not about Elena anymore. It's about you. His brow furrowed, confused, maybe even hurt, but he stayed quiet. You thought you could split your heart like someone splits a calendar, I continued softly. One day with her, the next with me. But what you gave her never came back, and what was left for me wasn't love. It was just habit. He ran a hand over his face, visibly shaken. Do you still love me? I smiled, weakly, because that question, coming from him, didn't mean what he thought it did. It was more about ego than emotion. Maybe. But love isn't enough. It's not always what saves us. He lowered his head. We were silent for a few moments. Then I said, You're going to walk out that door, Ray, and you're going to let me rest. No plans, no messages, no flowers or apologies, just silence. He didn't move right away. Then finally, he stood, stopped beside the bed for a moment as if he were going to say something. But then, he simply nodded. Before leaving, he set the envelope on the bedside table. In case you want to read it, I just didn't throw it away. You have that right. I nodded. He walked to the door, his hand on the knob. Then he turned one last time. I know I no longer have a place in your life, but Trina, if one day you look at me the way you used to, I won't, I interrupted, with no pain in my voice, just truth. He stood there for a second, took a deep breath, and left. The door closed, and with it, something inside me did too. But it wasn't destruction, it was freedom. My phone vibrated beside me. On the screen, Elena Turner. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the name calmly. For the first time, my heart didn't race, nor did anger rise in my throat. Her name no longer held power over me. It held pity. I answered. Silence for a moment. Then, the voice I knew as well as my own pain. Trina, I heard you were hospitalized. I'm really sorry. How are you feeling? Her voice sounded sweet, concerned, as if the last thing she'd done hadn't been to destroy my life in a white dress and a live stream. Better, I replied flatly. Strong enough to talk. On the other end, silence. She hadn't expected that. I didn't think you'd answer. I know there are a lot of feelings right now. Confusion, anger. Maybe you think I was unfair. I smiled, without showing my teeth. No, I don't think you were unfair, Elena. I know you were. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Can we talk? Just the two of us. Like before. As if time could rewind without leaving scars. But there was something in my voice she didn't recognize. Something that made it clear. This Trina wasn't the same. At the Hall family house, I suggested. Today? She sounded hesitant. Now. Ray is there. So are his parents. I don't know if it's appropriate. Perfect. That'll make it faster, I said, already picking up the envelope from the table. And Elena? Yes? Don't try to convince me. I didn't come today to listen. I hung up before she could say anything else. I stood slowly. My body still felt heavy, but my mind was sharp. Every step I took out of that hospital was a step out of what was left of the Trina who tolerated, who stayed silent, who waited to be chosen. In the lobby, Selena was already waiting for me. Leather jacket, sunglasses, and that crooked smirk that told me she knows everything. Ready? She asked, more than ever. We got into the car. The city moved outside as usual, indifferent to what was about to happen. But inside me, everything had shifted. Today, the lie would lose its last mask. The Hall family house had never looked so cold. Maybe it was just a feeling. Maybe it was the curtains drawn in the middle of the day. Maybe it was the way everyone sat there, stiff, tense, as if something had been announced but not yet revealed. Ray was standing by the fireplace, arms crossed. His eyes met mine, but I looked away. Mrs. Hall came to greet me with a nervous smile and worried eyes. Mr. Hall sat on the sofa, his brow furrowed like he already knew what was coming. And Elena? She was sitting in the armchair by the window, hair perfect, hands folded in her lap, like she owned the place. "Trina," she said, with that soft tone I always knew was fake. "I'm relieved you're okay. I'm alive, which is more than you probably hoped for," I replied, handing my purse to Selena without taking my eyes off Elena. An uncomfortable murmur passed through the room. Mrs. Hall glanced quickly at her son. "Trina," Ray started cautiously. "What's going on here?" I pulled the envelope from my folder, handed it to Mr. Hall. Inside are Elena's medical records, all obtained directly from the hospital where she claimed to be receiving treatment. There is no report. No proof of cancer. Not a single abnormal cell. Just spaced-out psychology sessions with no mention of a terminal illness. Elena shifted in her chair. Just a little. But I saw it. That's when the mask began to crack. Mr. Hall opened the documents, his eyes growing wider with each page. Mrs. Hall leaned in to look as well. The two exchanged a glance, and finally, she looked at Elena. "Elena, is this true?" She started, her voice faltering. "I just didn't want to worry anyone. I thought the symptoms were enough, and the doctors were being vague." "And what about the project you stole?" I asked, now holding a second folder. I opened it and spread the contents on the table. My work's copyright certificate, the formal plagiarism report, and copies of the emails I had sent even before the contest was announced. This was the gift I prepared for Ray. She took it from my drawer, signed it as if it were hers, and submitted it as if she had created it on her own. Selena stepped forward, her face flushed with fury. And to make sure no one found out, she told people Trina had dropped the project, said she had permission. But look, she held up her phone. Here's the conversation where she asked me to lie about the creation date, said it would only be for a while. That Trina wouldn't mind because she was happy with Nathan. She showed the screen to everyone. The silence that followed was like a soundless earthquake. Elena finally stood. Her eyes were full of tears, but it wasn't pain, it was panic. "Trina, I just wanted a chance. You always had everything. People loved you. You were the center of it all. I just wanted something that was mine. Something for someone to love me for." "Someone?" I interrupted. "You wanted what was mine. You wanted to be me. But you didn't even have the courage to create your own story." The sentence hung in the air, like thick smoke no one wanted to breathe. Elena was pale, her lips trembling. She looked around the room, searching for rescue in every face. Ray, Mrs. Hall, Mr. Hall, even Selena. But none of them moved. Not a single muscle. For the first time, she was alone. "Trina, you have to understand. I was desperate. I thought I was dying. I believed I was sick. The symptoms, the nausea, the fatigue. And none of that stopped you from marrying my boyfriend?" I fired back. "You could have asked for a hug, for care, for someone to be there. But you wanted the man. And when that wasn't enough, you stole what I wrote. My words, my feelings, as if it were the easiest thing in the world." "You don't understand," she mumbled, now with tears streaming down her face. "Everyone always loves you first, Trina. I was always the shadow. Trina's best friend. The sidekick to your perfect life. Perfect?" I let out a short laugh. A sick heart. A life on pause. 10 years in a relationship with someone who never truly chose me. If that's the perfect life you envy, maybe you need way more therapy than you pretended to get. Elena collapsed to her knees. Literally. She knelt there, on the rug in the Hall family's living room, and covered her face with her hands, sobbing like a child. I didn't want it to come to this. I just wanted to be loved. Mrs. Hall took a step forward. Her eyes were sharp, cold, the look of a woman who had seen enough. "Elena, you stayed in my home. You called me Mom, told us you didn't have much time left. You made us believe we were living the final months with someone who was dying." She paused, then turned to Ray. "And you brought this into our family." Ray lowered his head. For the first time, he didn't try to defend anyone. Mr. Hall stood slowly, with quiet strength. Elena Turner, out of respect for the home that welcomed you, and the dignity you failed to preserve, I ask that you leave now, and don't come back. Elena didn't respond. She just stayed there, on her knees, her face flushed, her hands trembling, like someone who had finally understood what it means to be exposed. I watched her for a moment. No part of me moved to help her. I wasn't cruel, but she was a fall that needed to happen. Elena walked out carrying what was left of her dignity. She didn't try to apologize again. She didn't look back. Mrs. Hall followed her with her eyes until the door closed. Then she turned back slowly, her shoulders heavy. "Trina," she said in a sad, almost ashamed voice, "I'm sorry. For having welcomed someone who hurt you like that. For not seeing what was right in front of us." I shook my head gently. "You don't need to apologize. I was the one who kept my eyes shut the longest. The rest was just consequence." She wanted to say something else, but the words got stuck in her throat. She walked over to me and gave me a short, almost shy hug. Mrs. Hall was a reserved woman, but in that moment, the gesture said it all. She knew. She knew they had lost me too. Selena stood silently by my side, but her look said what no one else in that room had the courage to say. "You won." And it wasn't by yelling. It was by not giving in. Mr. Hall gave me a respectful nod. Then he walked over to Ray, who still hadn't moved, like he had turned to stone beside the fireplace. "I hope you learned something from this, son," his father said, firm but not angry. "Because all this silence won't save you." Ray didn't reply. I knew he wanted to look at me, wanted to say something poetic, some phrase that could redeem months, or maybe years, of selfishness disguised as nobility. But I didn't give him that stage. "Trina," he finally called, his voice low. Do you still believe in us?" I looked at him, took my time, because something that serious deserved a thoughtful answer. "I believe in what we had, but I don't believe in what's left." He lowered his eyes. I didn't stay to hear anything more. I left the house without rush, steady steps, deliberate, like someone who no longer fears what's behind the door, like someone who knows exactly what she's carrying and what she's leaving behind. The afternoon sun hit me hard, and for a second, I had to blink against the brightness. It was warm, almost uncomfortable, but it was real. Nothing like the cold hospital lights or the dimness of that room full of masks. Selena was waiting by the car, leaning against the side, arms crossed. When she saw me approaching, she raised an eyebrow. "So? It's over." She nodded. Didn't smile, didn't celebrate. Just opened the passenger door and let me in. Before she rounded the car to the driver's seat, I heard footsteps behind me. "Ray." "Trina," he called out of breath. "Wait." I didn't turn right away. I wanted him to feel what it was like to be late. Again. "Just answer me one thing," he said when I finally turned. "Are you leaving with Nathan?" I nodded. "Does he love you?" "He chooses me, every day, even on the hard ones." Ray swallowed hard. His eyes were red, his lips trembling with words that never found the courage to come out. "And you?" I smiled gently. "I'm learning, but that's a better start than spending 10 more years trying to love myself alone." I got into the car. Selena was already ready to drive off. Before I closed the door, my phone vibrated on my lap. "Nathan, I'm waiting at the airport. Should I bring champagne or coffee?" I paused for a second, typed slowly. "Me. Champagne. Today starts my new life." And then I closed the door. The car drove away. And I went with it, with no regrets at all.